Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with Ron Placone.
Howdy, howdy.
So it's the 50th anniversary of the death of Martin Luther King, and it's got everybody remembering things. I love, this is one of my favorite quotes of his. He says, "A man dies when he refuses to stand up for which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for that which is true."
It's a powerful quote.
A man dies when he fails to stand up for that which is right. Wow, that's great. So here's Matt Orfalea does a lot of work for us. Great, talented editor. He put together this video. You can check him out on his video YouTube page. I'll put a link underneath.
The last 2 months of his life, Dr. King faced the idea that civil rights alone could not solve the problem of poverty. He roamed the South, trying to gain support for Poor People's Campaign. Its goals: full employment, a guaranteed income, and decent housing for every American.
The campaign would recruit among all races, bring them to Washington, force the government to respond, a nonviolent army of the poor.
All working together to solve the problem of poverty. We're tired of working full-time jobs for part-time income, and we are tired of not being able to find work. And it didn't cost the nation 1 penny to integrate lunch counters. It didn't cost the nation 1 penny to guarantee the right to vote. Now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power. Yes. If our nation can spend $35 billion a year to fight an unjust, evil war in Vietnam, and $20 billion to put a man on the moon, it can spend billions of dollars to put God's children on their own 2 feet right here on earth. This is a reality. Now, when we come to Washington, we're coming to get our check. Very frankly, this is a search for an alternative to riots. The riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if a man doesn't have a job or an income, he has neither life nor liberty and the possibility for the pursuit of happiness. He merely exists. We are demanding an emergency program to provide employment for everyone in need of a job. Or, if a work program is impractical, a guaranteed annual income at levels that sustain life in decent circumstances.
Man, we're talking about that now.
Yeah.
That is 50 years ago. That's amazing. And here we are talking about universal basic income, a job if you want one.
Still a radical idea.
Still a radical idea.
A radical idea in the contemporary United States.
Isn't that amazing?
It's a new beginning on the economic front.
The Poor People's Campaign was about economics. Hey, what happened to that whole movement? It's almost as if it disappeared.
Wait a minute. It didn't disappear. You might forget Martin Luther King was assassinated in April. The Poor People's Campaign was supposed to go to Washington in April. So the organization that mobilized it was essentially decapitated and thrown into chaos about 3 weeks before it was supposed to happen.
The realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. Now we're going to march again, and we've got to march again. People will come to see that not only is something wrong in general, but something is wrong in particular in their own economic situations. Constantly trying to make ends meet, but because of either no job or a job that is so economically unprofitable that the person can't make ends meet. And I think they see all of these things, and more they are coming to see them.
So that was by Matt Orfalea. Great job. And, you know, that's really why they killed him was when he started to have an economic message. And he heard him say it on the video that it didn't cost you a penny to integrate the lunch counter or give us the right to vote, but it's going to cost you billions to make sure we're whole economically. And, you know, they wrote about this in The Intercept. They called it the Santa Clausification of Dr. King, is what we do to him. We pretend, because all we do is focus on his civil rights work. They forgot that he had the Poor People's Campaign. And he was going to march on Washington to demand jobs and an economic life. So this is what, this is good. It says, because that's really what they got when he got unpopular, is when he went against the war machine and he started talking about economic equality. Mm-hmm. The Santa Clausification of King, as scholar Cornel West calls it, the portrayal of King as a celebrated consensus seeker, asking for common sense racial reforms, rather than as an anti-establishment radical, downplays the risks one of America's most revered activists took to live according to conscience. King was not just a fighter for racial justice, he also fought for economic justice and against war, and as a result, he spent the last years of his life, before being assassinated in '68, clashing not just with reactionary Southern segregationists, but with the Democratic Party's elite. Boy, how little things have changed, huh, Ron?
Yeah,
Isn't that amazing?
no kidding.
It's the same crap today. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz is tweeting out pro-Martin Luther King stuff. Mm-hmm. And I said, Martin Luther King would have hated you and denounced you publicly, you in bed with payday lenders, screwing over the most vulnerable and poorest people who you're supposed to be defending. You're selling them out. That's who Debbie Wasserman Schultz is. And then she went and cheated the country out of a progressive president, and she gave us Trump. And I will never let Debbie Wasserman Schultz forget who she is. And I will never let the rest of the Democratic Party forget that they cheated us out of a progressive. The Democratic Party did that. And there's Martin Luther King 50 years ago when he wanted to talk about real change and challenge the system. He was clashing with the Democratic Party's elite and other civil rights leaders who viewed his turn against the Vietnam War and the American economic system as dangerous and radical. People make fun of me for saying that we need socialism. I've seen other lefty shows they say they're lefty. They're not. They're just nerds who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They're boring nerds who no one listens to. Many in the civil rights community warned King to focus on black civil rights and ignore the war so as not to alienate the Democratic Party. He gave a speech at the Riverside Church in New York City where he called the U.S. government the greatest purveyor of violence in the world.
Again, not much has changed.
And denounced napalm bombings and the propping up of a puppet government in South Vietnam. He also called for a total re-examination of U.S. foreign policy, questioning capitalist exploitation of the developing world. Wow, things have really changed, huh, Ron?
I wish we would have listened.
Look how things have changed. And how people tried to keep him in his place by saying he didn't have a right to talk about the war. He didn't have a right to talk about economics. He was a civil rights leader. This is what they said. I'll read it to you. It said, this is what Martin Luther King said, for those who ask the question, aren't you a civil rights leader? And thereby mean to exclude me from the movement for peace. I have this further answer. In 1957, when a group of us formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, we chose as our motto, quote, to save the soul of America, end quote. We were convinced that we could not limit our vision to certain rights for black people, but instead affirmed the conviction that America would never be free or saved from itself until the descendants of its slaves were loosed completely from the shackles they still wear. Now it should be incandescently clear that no one who has any concern for the integrity and life of America today can ignore the present war. If America's soul becomes totally poisoned, part of the autopsy must read Vietnam. It can never be saved so long as it destroys the hopes of men the world over. It is that those of us who are yet determined that America will be are led down the path of protest and dissent, working for the health of our land. So that's what he's standing up against the war, saying that we're poisoning ourselves, and when they do the autopsy on America, Vietnam is going to be part of it. And don't try to shut me up, because that's what they're trying to do. King had considered himself a socialist. In 1966, he told staff at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that there must be a better distribution of wealth, and maybe America must move toward a democratic socialism.
Still trying.
That is exactly what I advocate. That is exactly what I advocate. Capitalism is failing. It has failed this country. What do you call a system that takes the richest country in the world and renders half of its population poor or low income? 63% of the people can't afford a $1,000 emergency. 29 million people don't have health insurance. 50% of all wage earners earn less than $30,000. What do you call that? You call that a failed system. Capitalism has failed, in case people don't know it. That's why Brexit happened. That's why we got Trump. That's why Oklahoma's on a 4-day fucking school week and their teachers have to go and petition and strike. Martin Luther King, is from Colin Kaepernick, tweeted this out. He said, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderates. We know some white moderates, don't we, Ron?
Oh, yeah.
We know a lot of white moderates. A lot of white moderates will wag their finger at you, tell you better vote for Hillary Clinton. That's a white moderate. That's who he's talking about. Anybody who wags their finger at you and says you can't vote your conscience, that's who he's talking about.
These days, I like to call them conservatives in denial.
Yes.
I feel like that's the most appropriate.
I call them gutless nerds who grew up in fucking cul-de-sacs. That's what I call them.
Mine's shorter.
I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. The Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who tells you that it's a pony if you want health care for all. It's a pony if you want free college. It's a pony if you want a living wage. It's a pony if you want to rein in the military budget and invest that money back here. It's a pony if you want a jobs program. These are all ponies.
It's not a pony if you want a living wage, but it is instant abs.
It's the white moderate who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. That's what people told me. It's not right you have to support the Democratic Party right now. You can vote third party later when there's already a bunch of people already voting for a third party. You can't vote for a third party until there's already a bunch of people doing it. Again, those are people who aren't leaders, don't even realize what they're saying, reveals that they're followers. I'm not a follower. I'm an anti-establishment guy. That's why I'm a successful comedian. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I'm on board with that.
Barack Obama would say it's your own fault. It's your own fault. You got to go to school. Got to become an innovator. That's what's wrong with the country. Nobody wants to vote. We've been going over this shit for 50 fucking years. Awesome, right?
Yeah.
So, and where is the Martin Luther King of today, right? So we got the black Ronald Reagan, which was Barack Obama. Where are we have Cornel West, but he gets marginalized immediately. Tavis Smiley, Cornel West, and the mainstream media marginalizes them.
Mm-hmm.
And who do they bring on? Malcolm Nance. I'd like to see, we should check out CNN's coverage today of, Martin Luther King, and if they stress his economic message and his poor people's campaign, I bet they do. I bet Don Lemon is not going to talk about anything else except the poor people's campaign.
Yeah, he's definitely going to lead with that.
We'll see. Maybe he will. I actually have fingers crossed. Oh, we need a Martin Luther King. Boy, do we need Martin Luther King more than ever, huh?
Yeah.
Boy. I would say a Malcolm X, too. I would like to see a Malcolm X. A Martin Luther King. Boy, oh boy. Oh, you know what? There is So who's doing the Moral Mondays? Oh, there is this guy. So it's he does Moral Mondays. It's the Reverend William Barber. And I actually saw him give a speech at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention. He's a very powerful guy. He's very good, just like Martin Luther King. But of course, he doesn't get the press that he should. So we need more like him. We need more like Martin Luther King. We need more like Cornel West.
Well, and this started in North Carolina, and it's spread to some other states, too.
Moral Mondays.
Yeah.
So that's my white guy perspective on Martin Luther King. I wish he was around today. I wish we had more of him. I like all those guys. I mean, I'm an anti-establishment guy. I get worked up when I see those. I see Martin Luther King give a speech, or I see Malcolm X give a speech, or I see this guy give a speech. It got me worked up. And these are the people we need for change. We need a revolution in America. They're not letting go.
Well, something, I really wish Dick Gregory could have held on a little bit longer, too. I would
you
like
see
to know
these
what he's saying right now.
And these people are marginalized.
Or what he would say right now.
These people are marginalized in the mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to marginalize them. We're going to give them a platform. Thanks for your support. Please make sure you're subscribed. It only takes a second. Click that bell. And if you click that bell, they'll send you a notice when we drop a video. Otherwise, they won't. And June 30th, we'll be in Portland, Oregon, doing a live Jimmy Dore show. If you can come see that or become a patron to help support the show, we give you hours of bonus material every week. Thanks for your support.